Okay, welcome back. It is currently May 2025, or yeah, I think it's May. And my video feed is absolutely full of people talking about Synologies and specifically what changed in 2025 and why you probably shouldn't buy a Synology NAS. What are the alternatives? It is controversial, but I can sort of see why people have, I can see why Synology are doing it, I think, and I can see why people aren't happy about it. This video is actually to talk about some of the good things about Synologies, because there is a lot of hate going on for the Synology brand at the moment, and maybe that's fair. You sort of have to take this with like not really a pinch of salt, but the people that hate this, I think, fall into two camps. Maybe three camps. One, there are people like me jumping on, hey, this is all over YouTube, let's make a video about it. And I'm not doing it specifically for that, but I think there are people that are doing that. There are a couple of really, maybe three that I know of, really well-informed channels that are probably definitely worth going to and getting more information. And they make a lot of content about NASs specifically. And then there are people that maybe are like home labbers, and I think they're the people that are most upset about this. Okay, so what are the changes? Well, if we have a quick look at the Synology website. Okay, so anyway, what they're saying, if you look at this, by the way, so you've got the DS, which is like disk station, or something like that. And then you've got, let's scroll down a little bit, if we find a smaller one, you've got like here, you've got DS224 Plus, or DS723 Plus. So the Plus is, and then here we go, we've got a DS124 and DS223, DS423. Actually, this is the perfect line. So DS, the station, 1, it's only got 1 bay. 2, it's got 2 bays. 4, there are 4 bays, which I think are vertical, horizontal in this one, and vertical in these ones. It might not be, it might be the other way, I'm not sure. And then 2.3, 2.4, or 2.3. So this is model year 2023, model year 2024, and I think we saw some 18s a minute ago. There is a 2020, 22, 21. Sure, I saw an 18. Maybe I didn't. Okay. And then at the end of that, you may get other things. So a J is like an entry level. I think there's one called Play. I don't know what the Slim is. I think maybe it only takes, small drives. Not really sure. Oh yeah, 6 times 2.5. You got the ones without anything at the end, and you got the ones with a plus. Now the plus is kind of like, I would say it's the best in any kind of line, in any kind of product line, I suppose. So if you imagine here, you've got a 124, there would have been a 224, I think. Was there a 224? I think there was, but you've got a 124, a 223, a 224 plus. Of those 3, the 224 plus is the better one. If you look at this, a 223, a DS223, a DS423, and a DS224 plus, the DS224 plus is the better one. Not because of its model year, but because of that plus. And you can see partly, one of the things you get on this is you get double network interfaces, which is kind of okay, except, this is 2025 and this was 2023 and this was 2020, And in all of those years, 1 gigabit internet links is kind of sucky. Network links, sorry, is kind of sucky. These should be 2.5 gig at a minimum, to my mind. But, you know, that isn't the case, and fair enough, I suppose. Now, if you look at some of the bigger ones, like these 18s, these you will be able to, on this 24, 16, etc. On these, you'll be able to put like a 10 gig network interface in the back. But I think as standard, it still only comes with 2 1 gigabyte links, 1 gigabyte network links. I think. Where's the specs listed? Storage, external ports. Okay, so it's got 4 1 gigabyte network links. I mean, okay, if you've got a switch that can link aggregate, then you've got 4 gig. So that's not the end of the world, but I just think like this is pretty terrible, to be honest. But anyway, that's not the point. That's not why people are unhappy. If you bought this drive, when I bought, or that NAS, when I bought mine in 2020, was when I bought the first one, I think, in 2023 when I bought the other one. They were basically free for me to go away, and well, they weren't free. I mean, you've got to buy the unit, and it's quite expensive in itself, but it's basically a PC. Yeah, it is basically a computer. And then you went away and bought the software. And when I bought my first one, I bought it from Amazon, and in the Amazon link, I could buy it without discs, or I could buy it with discs. And I think all of the options were Seagate Iron Wolf, and they were, you know, I could get like 2 times 3 terabytes, or 2 times 6 terabytes, or 2 times 10 terabytes, or whatever. Or I could just buy it diskless and put my own discs in. And that was fine because I didn't have to buy those Seagate discs. There may have been some Western Digital, I can't remember. I think there was only Seagate ones when I looked, and that may have just been the advert that I clicked on. But there was nothing stopping me from buying a diskless one, getting it delivered to my home, and putting any drives I wanted into it within reason. You know, if you put a desktop class drive in here, it's probably not going to last very long, especially if you put a couple of them in here, because like a NAS drive is designed to detect the other drives around it, is one of the things it's designed at. They're also designed to have, you know, high read and writes, whereas a desktop probably isn't. It's probably lots of reading, I suppose. Well, no, maybe they're middle, like, you know, half, not really sure about that. It's taken me an awful long time to get there, I suppose. But the 2025 ones, if you bought a 925 plus, which is the one like this one here, okay, the reason is that if you bought a Plus series NAS device today, or the 2025 model, if you do not buy Synology branded drives, then you lose some of those features that the thing can do. So if you go back to here and we have a look at like let's have a look at a 723, and we go through the features. If we work all the way through this, some of these things are only available. If this was the product page for the 2025 model years, some of these things are only available if you buy them with these Synology branded drives. I think it actually says with certified drives only. If you watch these videos, I think it says certified drives only. Now, that at the minute, I think that list is Synology branded drives only. I think it's highly likely that that will expand to more brands shortly. Otherwise, they'll probably find themselves in front of the EU for, you know, unfair business practices or something like that. You know, there are obviously pluses for this. I'm not going to try and defend the multi-billion-dollar company for, you know, trying to make a few extra bucks, because, you know, these Synology branded drives do come with a slightly inflated price tag. I think there are reasons for this, reasons that are sort of maybe justifiable. When you buy a drive, I mean, I've got a couple of drives on my desk at the moment, and these are just a couple of old desktop drives. But when you buy a drive, that drive, it might say it's a Seagate Iron Wolf 4 terabyte, and it might have a model number on. And if you look at the sticker, it might tell you all about the cache sizes and everything else on it, and it may look like it's the same as the other one. But when you install them, depending on where you bought them from and how long that supplier had them in stock and various other things, there is a small chance that they have different firmwares on there. And firmware is kind of like instructions for how the hard drive will work, how to access the head and stuff like that. If these Synology ones are basically what we're saying, or what Synology is saying, is that we're only going to stick our sticker on drives that have the right firmware, because it's going to be our firmware, or it's going to be a firmware that was created just for us. Now, Synology don't actually make hard drives. I don't think they've got the sort of capability to do that, and it's not really the kind of business that I think companies want to spend millions or billions of dollars getting into at this sort of phase of computing. So what they're doing is they are buying drives from someone else who I think is Seagate, but it might not be, putting a custom firmware on, or having a custom firmware installed at the factory, and selling them. And you pay a little bit extra for that, the privilege of having a Synology badge on it. My neighbour has a Range Rover. No, he doesn't. He has a Land Rover, one of the Discoveries, or Discovery Sport. And this story kind of reminds me a little bit of that, this bit of the story, in that if you go and get your tyres inflated at, the supermarket, it's probably just air, and you pay 50p on it. You get like 2 minutes worth of air to run around and inflate all 4 tyres on your car. And if you go to the Land Rover dealership, they'll charge you, I think it was like £40 to inflate your tyres. Now, you are paying someone else to do it, but this is like Land Rover air, it's not just air, it's got nitrogen in, and I think it is supposed to be a better thing to put inside your tyres. It keeps them nice and inflated, but you're paying for the privilege of someone else saying, I think this is a better product. Okay, so basically that's what you're paying for, and that's why people are unhappy about it. However, I think you have to understand, well, you don't really have to understand about hard drives, but I saw some statistics quite a few years ago, and I think that it's probably still very true. So I used to work in an enterprise, and we were installing a massive storage device, maybe NetApp or something like that. We went through, for some reason, we had to go through and do a little bit of research on drives that we were buying and blah blah blah. And at the time, we found some publicly available documentation that we presented to the IT manager over there. There are basically only 3 instances where a hard drive dies. The first instance is, it just got through QA, there's something wrong with it, it doesn't matter, it's going to die very soon after you install it and start using it. And that's just the luck of the draw. And the second reason is you've had it for a very long time, you've had it for a lot of operational hours, you've written huge amounts of data to it, and maybe read huge amounts of data from it as well, and you've basically worn down the mechanical parts of this drive. And then the third reason is because, like, human error. Someone dropped it, someone got it put it in a environment where it got too hot, or it got too cold, or it got too wet, or it got dust too sand, like a sandy environment. And they're kind of the only reasons that it's going to break. So if you bought a Synology stickered drive and put that in your Synology device, you basically have the same amount of chance as if you bought a Seagate drive or a Western Digital or a Toshiba or whoever else is making drives. You've got the same chance of those three things happening. It might well have a nice custom firmware on, but it might still die within a few weeks or months of being installed in your NAS, and that is just unlucky. It's just something that happens. Or you may have it and it operates for years and years and years, and then it dies, and that's also just something that happens. Or you may have it and your kid might knock the NAS off your desk, or your I don't know, the young children bring some sand in from the garden and it somehow gets into the inside your Synology and your drives go. So it doesn't really matter what the label is, that just doesn't matter. And if you look inside any of these videos, probably any of these videos, or if you go to an Amazon page and look at type 4 terabyte hard drive, or 8 terabyte or 18 terabyte, or whatever it is you're looking for, and look at the reviews underneath, there will be as many people in that review list or in their YouTube comments that think that is the greatest drive that they've ever had. That brand of drives they've always had, they've always been perfect, never had any trouble. And then there'll be just as many people that say that's the worst drive they've ever bought. They bought 4 of them, 3 of them died within a week, a month, 6 months, whatever. Or 4 of them died, even worse. And that, they were just unlucky. And statistically, they all kind of even out. I mean, there are some drives that, they are statistically more error prone than other ones. And again, I think that kind of data is probably out there in the public. I don't know if I could find it. Let's see. Statistics for hard drive failure in data centers. So something like this. Oh, backblades, yeah, these things get spoken about all the time. Hard disk. Okay, I think I might have seen this one quite recently, actually. Anyway, so they'll go through and they'll talk about drives, and there will be something in here that says, there will be like a model of drive, like a WD blah 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 CU14-2 or something. And it turns out that one had quite a lot of faults within a short period of time. Well, maybe it was withdrawn by the manufacturer, or maybe they changed their manufacturing processes, and maybe it stayed out. They continued selling it under the same product model number, and then it went on to sell another, couple of 100,000 of them or something, and never had another failure. Now, so if you look at stuff like this, if you can get into the sort of deep data, I don't know if it's in here. There you go. You can download the file. If you wanted to, you could probably dig in, and you could see there will be outliers where there were lots of problems at the beginning, and then slowly it went. Slowly that product came out all right over time. And I think overall, all hard drives are kind of the same anyway. So sticking a Synology disk on a drive, I don't really see what it gives you, to be honest. But what it probably does, or what I think it does, based on some of those videos that I've seen on YouTube recently, is it gets rid of some of the problems where a user plugs in a drive, or 2 drives, and they think they're the same drive, and they've got the same model number, but they've got different firmwares, and then they act differently for some reason, and they cost Synology support a bit of money in the first couple of years that you have your warranty. Where people keep calling up and saying, look, I don't know what's going on, I tried this, and blah blah blah, or this app isn't working on my Synology, blah blah blah. So they're getting rid of some of those costs, and those are probably mostly consumers, like residential customers rather than business customers. Now, what I would like to know is, I wonder if Synology will release any statistics regarding how, you know, amazing their drives are. It had to undergo 7,000 hours of testing before it, with that particular firmware, before it could be certified for use in a 925 plus or any other 25 plus devices. So yeah, okay, they should have some confidence, but that doesn't mean that every drive that comes off the production line would be able to last 7,000 hours. It just doesn't work like that. They ain't gonna send you a drive that's already been running for 7,000 hours, because they've already taken a good chunk of its life out. So there'll be a few that they did the tests on and they all worked fine, so the entire product line got certified. That's probably how it's going to work. And then that doesn't stop the odd one getting in that's going to ruin that's going to be the outlier and give someone a real bad taste of a Synology branded drive. I think most people that buy, well, if you're looking on YouTube, you probably represent either a small business or a home purchase. And for a very small business and a home purchase, every penny you spend is probably quite important. Okay, so by that I mean that I think the reason that they're getting so much bad press at the moment is if someone's charging you £400-600, let's just say, for a NAS device, and then insisting that you then spend however many hundreds of pounds on Synology branded storage media as well, then perhaps that makes it a little bit too expensive. And then you've got to look at things like this and think, I wonder if that Ugreen, which always seems cheaper than the Synology stuff to me when I've looked, or QNAP or something else like that very, very cool looking Zimmer Cube. Yeah, so he's quite funny, he's got a very dry sense of humor, but when he's sort of going through it does look pretty cool. Anyway, I personally have only ever worked with either enterprise grade storage devices like the NetApp or the Synology devices, actually. So I've never built a DIY NAS, and I have never used a QNAP device, nor have I seen one, actually. So if you're at the consumer level, at the home purchase, or very small business, maybe looking around and seeing what else is available is like the right thing to do. In fact, it's always the right thing to do, because once you've made a decision, I don't think for your average home, for most home users and for most small businesses, the right thing to do is build your own NAS. No, that's never the right thing to do. That will end up costing you so much more in time, energy usage, like the actual electric usage, how much hair you pull out trying to fix it and deal with problems and trying to work your way through support forums, which quite often for those DIY NASs that are built on Linux, the people that build them are mostly clever people, and they and there is a thing where people say, oh, the Linux community is super friendly. Yeah, it is mostly, but whenever you go in a forum, there is an awful lot of snarky, snide comments. Did you read the manual? Someone's panicking, they're stuck, they're lost, they're crying out for help, and somebody took 20 seconds to write, did you read the manual? Well, great. It's great that or yes, I can see the answer in your log file. Did you not read it? It's like, come on. If you want to go down the DIY NAS thing, you're doing it because you are either exceptionally competent, or you're just doing it because you want the technical challenge. And for small businesses, average home user, slightly, no, it isn't the right answer. The right answer, if you want to do network attached storage, is a branded device that's already made, a Synology, a QNAP, or a Ugreen. Once you've walked into that, once you've made that decision, and this is why they get a hard time, if you look at like Linus Tech Tip, backing up your life is easy. Okay, so he's got 5 years ago, he seems to be talking about okay about the Synology. In fact, I haven't watched that video, so I don't know. But recently he's like, they wanted to sue me, but I can't stand for this. You know, if you sort of go through those, see some of his videos, he points out one of the biggest shortcomings, and not just him, but a few other channels will do this as well. The biggest shortcoming of making this decision now about getting yourself a Synology or a QNAP or a Ugreen or doing it yourself, well, maybe not doing it yourself, but is you tie yourself into products. You know, once you've made the investment, okay, to be honest, it's just a box. You might change the box later on, you know. To use this to not its full potential, but to the level that most people will use it, you will start using some of those applications that it's got, like the photos backup. And once you've started using that, it becomes very, very difficult to move to another platform, which is why Synology makes the Photos app. You know, that's why they do it. They don't really think they can challenge the likes of Apple's iCloud and Google's whatever they call their cloud. There is a real legitimate reason for using your Synology as your photo storage instead of using someone else's cloud. But the reason they make those apps, and they're not bad, the reason they make those apps is because they know that once you've gone through the hassle of you know, backing up your 18,000 photos to this device, and you're able to access them using Synology Photos, for example, you probably aren't ever going to move to another NAS device or another brand of NAS device. You might move to a bigger box or bigger drives, all of those things, that's fine. All of that can be done while staying inside the ecosystem. And that's why people like Linus and other tech-heavy channels don't really like you to use these kind of things, because they don't want to be locked in, you know, and that's fine. There's a good argument for that as well. But most people that are buying these, they're home users or small businesses. For like medium-sized businesses or startup scale businesses, scale-ups, they don't really care about this thing that's got Synology in the news at the moment, because if you're spending, you know, $1,000, couple of thousand on a NAS device or NAS devices and storage, a few extra pounds or a few extra dollars, euros, whatever, for Synology branded storage rather than any old storage, you know, it's like, it doesn't make, it's just nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. They wouldn't notice it. Most businesses will, you know, write down the cost of those, you know, those hardware purchases anyway through taxes throughout the life of the device. So it doesn't really matter to them. Now, for a home user and a small business, yeah, it does matter to you. But then why are people so unhappy about this? If you look at the product page when it goes live, and if it has an asterisk that says if you use Synology drives you get these features, and if you don't use them you get these features, and then you buy it and you don't use them, what are you losing out on? You were told right from the beginning these are the features you got. You either don't care about the features that had the asterisk next to them, or you couldn't afford it now and that was a thing that you were willing to go with. Stick something else in. Later on you'll come back and repopulate your NAS with bigger Synology branded drives, and that does work. That is a perfectly good strategy, by the way. Although I must admit, I don't know if that means let's say you had a 4-bay NAS and you stuck 2 Western Digital drives in, and then later on you added a Synology drive. I don't think that would unlock all of the features. You would probably need to replace the 2 unsupported drives first before you unlock those features, which, you know, that is an expensive way of owning one of these devices. There's no denying that. It does make doing those upgrades more expensive. It does make getting that decision right at the beginning a lot more important. But then you come to the next thing that I question on this. The 925 Plus is a powerful drive. I don't think there are many home users that need a 9-bay NAS device or a 4+5. I don't think there are many home users that need that. There is an argument for many bays with small drives is more efficient, more cost efficient than few bays with large drives, and that's probably true. but a 9 bay is kind of excessive. So I think this is only aimed at businesses anyway. The only other people that product might find its way into the homes of what we would call prosumers, or like they want professional grade stuff but it's still for their home, or they're what you might call home labbers, and those are the people that work that NAS box way harder than anyone else, and those people probably don't call support very often anyway, so they ain't costing Synology any money, but they are the kind of people that have very strong opinions about the storage brands. Okay, so those, I think, people that are in the prosumer market, people that are in the home lab market, they probably have experience of buying some Western Digital drives and some Seagate drives and some Toshiba drives, and there will be a lot of them that think this brand is the most amazing thing, and a lot of them that think this brand is the worst thing. They want the freedom to choose what they put in there. I think there are pluses and minuses. I can kind of see it, and I feel like I'm just sitting on a fence. You know, there are reasons for what Synology did. I can sort of see them, and there are reasons why people aren't happy about it, and I can definitely see that. But I think the Synology NAS as a sort of line of products, they are pretty much rock solid. Like I said earlier on, I've never done a DIY thing myself. I've never tried those Ugreen devices, which do look good and seem to be really nicely priced. There is a unifying NAS, which I'm not even sure it's available in the UK, but that looks pretty smart, although it's kind of a rack mounted thing. The QNAP stuff looks good. Like I said earlier on, that Zimmer Cube looks flipping amazing. It looks gorgeous to my eyes, and we're all different, but that looks just gorgeous. I don't know why, but yeah, so for me the Synology devices kind of tick all the boxes, and as I said earlier on, I am kind of in that ecosphere. I made the decision to go into this Synology stuff 5 years ago or something like that. Synology Photos would be a bit of a pain to migrate all of that stuff. I think that would be quite painful to try and migrate Synology Photos. I'm kind of in this ecosphere now, and for me, I probably am going to stick with the Synology. Now, the one I've got on my desk right now, this one is the Synology NAS 223. So this is a non-plus model from 2023 model year. It has 2 gig of RAM on it. It has some ARM processor that isn't especially powerful. It can't do things like transcoding, so it's not really good for very high quality media streaming. I think the biggest problem with this one is only got a single 1 gigabyte network interface. That in itself I think is terrible. I do prefer the 220 Plus because it's got a dual NIC. I haven't upgraded the RAM in that one, so it's only got 2 gig. This has only got 2 gig. The processor is a bit more powerful in the other one, but for what I do with it, I don't think it really matters. So this one's only got 2 gig of RAM. It's only got that ARM processor, the sort of simple processor, and it's only got a single gig network interface. It's only got 2 bays. It might seem a little bit limited, but don't rush into that decision, okay? What you think you will use and what you actually use are usually 2 different things, okay? So I think I am not a common home user, and I am not a uncommon. You know, I think I'm right in the middle of the pack, and most people will be like me. We will use very little of what this thing can do. I think if you've got the money, it's always better to buy a 4-bay. You don't need to go out and buy 925 Plus and then be forced into buying Synology hard drives. You should really sit down and try and decide what you need before you go out and buy it. Most people will look at it as being some kind of backup, which it isn't, but it is better than nothing. If you sat down and you were honest with yourself, and if you've never had one of these devices before, you might not know how to be honest with yourself. You might watch a bunch of these videos on YouTube and think, yes, I will do that. Yes, I will do that. Yes, I will do that. So I need all of these features. Yeah, but most people probably don't. You might turn them on, try them for a few days, forget about them. Most people use a NAS to store files on, and that's kind of it. And an awful lot of people use a NAS to store files on for one PC or one laptop or one person's multiple devices. What else could have done that? Significantly faster would be something like a Lacy 2Big. However, when you think about the cloud delivered services, the things that will tie you into your NAS, okay, so for me that is things like Synology Photos. I rely on that. I've got used, well, I don't rely on it, but I've got used to it, and so have other people in my family. Now we've got used to that product, it's going to be really hard to go out, move to a Ugreen, find their app, get used to that one, migrate all of our photos, you know, so we're kind of stuck in that, in the Synology ecosphere. However, when you look at what these things can do and you watch all of the YouTube videos and you think, oh yeah, I think I would like to be able to do that. If you go down that road, you could end up buying a lot more than what you need. But the way a NAS works, it's not like your laptop. You know, it doesn't have Google Chrome running and gobbling up like 2-3 gig worth of RAM. It's not like that. You know, I think you'll be surprised at what you can do with one of these devices. Now, I've made this video really long and I'm just talking about why I think they're good devices, really. I'm going to leave it there. I am going to wrap it up because I spent way too long. I really need to get into the habit of like doing some kind of script or something so that I don't keep just blabbering on. In my next video, I'm going to turn it on from scratch. So I've kind of taken everything out of this. At the moment, this has got no drives in it. If I pull this cover off the front, this one has got no drives in it, and the reason it's not got the drives, it hasn't got the sleds, is because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of old desktop drives. Now these are desktop drives and this is definitely not recommended, but I'm going to take a couple of these really old, and they're also quite small, and this one is like 2009 or something, so it's pretty old. It's not supposed to be in a NAS. The reason I've done that is because I want to show how to set one of these up. This is a 223, it's using DSM 7.2, so if you went out and bought a 925 today, or a 224 or a 424 or something, how you set that up is the same as what I'm going to do with this one. Let's leave it there for now, and thank you for watching. Seems I had a lot more to say about that than I thought I did. Come and check it out next time, and hopefully we'll actually do something interesting with it. See you next time. Bye bye.